Welcome to my RA360's Talk with Tex. My name is Adonis Lockett, and tonight we're talking to an appraiser. Now, for anyone who's ever purchased a property, you know that an appraiser is the make or break of any real estate transaction. They are often the most undervalued, but potentially the most important dynamic in your entire loan process. So joining us tonight to tell us all the tricks of the trade, secrets, and dispelling myths about appraisers is Mr. Chad Smith. Chad, thank you for joining us. So let's jump right in. Okay. Chad, tell us, you've been in the business for 5+ years as an appraiser. So tell me, first of all, let's start with your background. How did you get into being an appraiser?
So first, getting into the industry, I was kind of in the sales department. So I was doing a lot of sales for 10+ years. I worked for AT&T, worked for a variety of companies that does sales.
Okay.
Moved here from Little Rock, Arkansas, and I had a friend that was in the real estate industry. When I called him, I was wanting to learn a little bit more about it after I talked to him before, and he was just saying, hey, man, you come work with me, come do something, and learn about real estate appraisals.
Okay.
Me, from my background, from what I knew originally, was just real estate agent or you were a real estate investor.
Okay. All right.
I didn't have the aspect of the real estate appraisal process in my head when I spoke to him. So when I did get with him, it gave me a whole new perspective of what the real estate industry is.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
So with getting into the real estate industry, I started working, doing appraisals, got my trainee license, started moving up, started learning more about what property worth is and value and what's the true meaning of value.
Okay.
And just learning more aspects of it. So it really brought me in and it was very intriguing. So that's why I kind of got into the industry.
How long have you been an appraiser?
For about 5 years now.
Okay, 5 years. And so with that, I imagine that you've dealt predominantly, so have you dealt more predominantly with homeowners or investors, or is it really tough to tell?
It's not tough to tell. More so homeowners. I would say about 10 to 15% are investors.
Okay.
So mainly residential properties, new builds, new existings, refinances, things to that nature is what my whole business kind of persists around. But I did have the 15 to 20% of investors that I did deal with from time to time.
So tell me why your trade is important for any real estate transaction.
The thing is that people don't understand about real estate is everything has value.
Right.
And with value, you have to get value from somewhere. So the comparables that are on the market, you have to be able to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges down to a fine pick comb.
Okay.
You have to go through detail by detail, and you got to differentiate the differences between the two. And then you have to come up with a median or a mean in between the two that's fair and comparable to both.
Okay. So then it sounds like there are parameters that you work within whenever you're evaluating a house.
Yes.
So what are the typical parameters that you typically use to evaluate the value of a home?
First, I look at the property. I look at the built. I look at what year it's built in.
Okay.
So that can kind of give me an understanding of the depreciation of it.
Now, depreciation, what does that mean?
Depreciation of it is meaning if something is built 10, 20 years ago,
Okay.
what is the value aspect of it losing value compared to what it's gaining? Okay. So, and how long it's been built to how long the construction of materials are going to last. So you need to know the value of how long it is and the lifespan. If you have something that's built 60 years ago and you don't have the proper care for it, it's not going to last too much past the 65 to 70 year, which is the normal life expectancy for a home.
Oh, I got to tell you, right there, out the gate, Jim.
Yes.
Because for me as an investor, as a lender, I didn't even know that. Yeah. So that's all right. So very solid. So now, again, the parameters that you work within, you say year built.
Yes.
What are some of the other parameters that you consider?
Square footage, of course, that's the main thing. One of the main things that we look at. Lot size, how big it is, where it's located. Okay. That's very important, where it's located. It can be an in-lot. It can be a cul-de-sac. It could be plenty of things on where it is, but that all determines and goes towards the value on the location.
So let's talk square footage for a moment. So I got a 1,500 square foot house.
Okay.
Can I use a house that's 2,500 square feet? Or are there like parameters that you have to work within based on the square footage?
Yes. The parameters are First, you look at what's close and what's close to the square footage. What I normally do is if you have a house that's 1,500 square foot, I will look at homes between 1,200 to maybe 1,800.
Okay.
I will maybe go 300 to 400 below
Okay.
the 1,500 subject, and I will go 300 to 400 above. And I'll see what all comps are in that area regarding this closeness of the 1,500 square foot. And if you can't get any comps in that area, you have to analyze the market area to understand how far you can expand those horizons to see what comps are actually eligible to be a comparable for that subject.
So you said 300 to 400 square feet. So
Yes.
is there a certain percentage that you work within? So if I have a house that's, X square feet, is there a percentage up and down that you go? Because you mentioned 300 or 400 specifically.
Yes.
So is that associated with a percentage, or is that kind of like just a gut reaction?
That's more so of a gut reaction and experience.
Okay.
But it gives me the aspect of closeness. 300 to
Okay.
400, I feel, is the closeness of square footage that you kind of want to compare something to. You don't want to just off the bat go to 1,000. You may have 100 properties within 200 to 300 square foot. And if you automatically go out to 800 to 1,000, you have too many comps to play with. You know what I mean? So you want to start off small, closest to that 1,500 as possible from the upside to the low side.
Okay.
Just to see what's close, tight knit to it, that you can kind of compare it, because most of the time things live in the same habitat as what it's built.
Correct.
So meaning if something is built by a builder in this area, more than likely it's going to be more homes that's similar to this home with the same similar structure built right next to it.
Okay. So it sounds like you mentioned 1,500 as the size of the house, but you'll go 300 to 400 down and 300 to 400 up. So it sounds like 20 to 25% is kind of the range that you're working with on the lower and the upper. Is that like a standard rule of thumb, or is that just for this particular example? Like, help me
This is just
understand.
a particular example. It's by a case scenario.
Okay.
Some situations, neighborhoods are built up completely and have a lot of comparables. In some situations, subdivisions are fairly new. So it just depends on what the situation is. If I have a lot of comps and a lot of houses in the area, I will start off with a close knit, and 300 to 400 is my starting knit that I start off, and then I expand from there depending on how many comps that I get based off of the analytics or information that I pull from the 300 to 400, top or bottom.
So does the number of bedrooms and bathrooms count towards value, or is it predominantly on just the size?
It does count.
Okay.
It does factor into a lot, because when you're comparing apples to apples, like I stated before, you're comparing those type of details.
Okay.
Bedroom count, bath count. What's the quality of materials that it takes to build the bathroom?
Okay.
So you have to give houses and subjects and comparables credit for what they have compared to what the subject is. So you have to make differences and you have to make adjustments based off of that.
All right. So we're gonna go into kind of a lightning round. I'm gonna propose a scenario, and I'm gonna say, hey, listen, here's the circumstance. Is this a valid comparable? Yes or no? Okay. So I have a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 2020 build.
Okay.
And I'm comparing it to a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1960 build. Is that a comparable? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. I have a 1960 build and a 1970 build. The 60 build is a 4-bed, 3-bath. The 70 build is a 3-bed, 3-bath.
Okay.
Is that a solid comparable?
Yes.
Okay. So just from that example, it sounds like if I have something that's built in like a new construction, I cannot compare that to a 1960s build.
No.
Tell me why.
The reason why is because the year that it was built, 1960, it was completely different parameters around the structure that they built it.
Okay.
So it was a completely different blueprint. It was a completely different quality of materials that they used back then.
Okay.
Most of the time before 79, it was lead and paint based.
Okay.
They use pier and beams at a certain period of time as well. So on the new structure homes, they use concrete slabs.
Okay.
So which is a completely different. Brick is different. Siding is different.
Okay.
A lot of things are different. So what we do is when we compare comparables, we compare like to like. So if it's some 2020 build, you normally want to stay within maybe 3 to 4 to 5 year range. And then if you have to work your way back, you can. But 1960, when you get past 50 to 60 years, a lot of those are going to be compared to things that were built around that era.
Got it. So it's safe to say that a new construction build even if it's the same size, square footage, bed and bath count, is not comparable to a 1960s build, for example.
No, I'm gonna give you an analogy just to answer that question.
Sure.
It's almost like saying, hey, I have a 2020 Cadillac Escalade.
Okay.
They might have started building Escalades maybe in early 2000 or so.
Sure.
Would you actually put a year 2000 compared to a 2020 and say, hey, this is similar based off of just being the brand of a Cadillac? You know what I mean?
Fair
so
enough.
that's kind of the situation that I would
Got
give
it.
you an analyzation for.
Got it. Okay. That makes perfect sense. So then, and so I want to jump into the details of this, right? Because there's a lot of misconception that goes into how to qualify appraised value, right?
Okay.
So I have a similar house, similar bed and bath count, similar year built. It's pretty similar. One has a pool, one does not. Is that one with the pool or not with the pool completely thrown out? Or do you make adjustments up or down considering one has a pool and one does not? Like, what happens there?
It depends on the quantity of the comparables.
Okay.
So say, for instance, if I'm low on comparables while I'm looking at the market, I will take the one with the pool into consideration.
Okay.
And I will also look at the properties that also have pools that's in that area.
Okay.
So I can get the contributory value towards that pool. I will
Okay.
see how much the homes are with the pool are costing compared to the houses that are without a pool.
Okay.
So I can see what the contributory value. The biggest myth that I see a lot of people do when they're doing investments is they think that they spend $45,000 for a pool, it's going to add $45,000 to the value, and that's not necessarily correct.
All right, so let me pause right here.
Yeah.
So this brings me to a perfect question.
Yes.
Dispel myths that come with appraisals. You just mentioned
Yes.
if I spend $45,000 for a pool, that'll add $45,000 to the value of the home. Is that an appraisal myth?
That is an appraisal myth. It doesn't add the value that you put into what you're putting in on your subject. The reason why is because you're only as good as what's around you.
Okay.
So if a lot of people are not desired to have pools in the back, then what you have may be an over improvement. It may not be something that everybody wants. So therefore, you can't get extra credit for something going out the box if you don't have others to compare it to that necessarily want the same thing.
What do you mean by over improvement?
Okay, over improvement is getting in a property, looking at the aspects of it and thinking that you can change the value by putting the effort or the money or income into the actual property. So you putting maybe, give you an example, if you was to go on a 200,000 square foot subdivision, the highest comp is 220, you buy at 210, you come in and you want to put a pool, you want to put a guest quarters, you want to put a mother-in-law suite, you want to do all these aspects that you feel contributes to value, and it doesn't. You're only as good as the surroundings and the market area around you.
Got it. So just to reiterate, over improving would be an example that if I'm buying a $200,000 house in a neighborhood where that's right around the higher end, if I add a $50,000 pool, that doesn't make my house $250,000.
No.
That makes me a $200,000 house with a pool.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
But let me tell you this. What we do as appraisals with explaining and understanding apples and oranges, we get the contributory value.
Okay.
Meaning if someone has a pool and say, for instance, if they have a pool and they're having their house sell 10 to 15,000 over what the houses without a pool are having, then 15,000 may be the contributory value.
Got it.
Because
Okay.
that's the difference between the two, and that's what's available, and that's what you have to compare it against.
So let me ask this question, right? You hear this a lot. A property is only worth what someone is willing to pay. However, if I'm willing to pay $250,000 for a house in a neighborhood where everything else is selling $200,000, why would the appraisal be shorted in value if I'm willing to pay for that at $250,000? Because it feels kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Because if I'm trying to say that my house is worth $200,000 and it's been sitting on the market for 6 months, then the first knee-jerk reaction is, well, your house obviously isn't worth $200,000 because in the neighborhood, $200,000 selling in 30 days, but your house has been 6 months, so your house can't be worth $200,000. So why can't the equal apply on the opposite end? Why can't if I have someone willing to pay $250,000 in a neighborhood where they're all selling for $200,000, why can that apply on the short end but not the back end and the higher end? Why is that?
The thing is, when you're comparing, you're comparing.
Right.
So what I'm meaning by that is, so if you come in as an investor and you want to pay over the amount of what's actually going on in that area, you control the value.
Okay.
And not the value itself. And if you have people coming in that just want to control the value, everyone is making the value go up based off of them having bigger pockets. And that's not how it goes, because you can control the thing, and it's not from an aspect of just being ethical. It's not going to happen. It makes things like the market crash that we had in 2008, things like that. When bending the rules and doing things differently outside of what you're actually looking at, value and what things are worth, you have to keep some type of parameters and partial opinions, and you have to be unbiased about the situation to make sure that value is taking place and it's taking place the correct way, because you have a lot of people with bigger pockets coming into a 200,000 neighborhood paying 300,000 for 3 to 4 homes and expect the value from all those homes, which I'm pretty sure the people that live in the 200,000 homes will love their value to go up to 300,000.
Right.
But if it was that easy, everyone would do that aspect and find loopholes in the system.
And that would create artificial inflation.
There you go. There you go.
So, would you agree that artificial inflation is what caused the market to crash back in 2008?
Yes. I think it was a lot of...
Explain artificial inflation.
Artificial inflation, I feel, from my perspective, is going through loopholes to get the value to where you want it to be and not necessarily what it actually is.
Got it.
And once you're doing that, it just conflates with everything that you're doing and the market. So it just intervenes with the buying and the selling of the transactions in that market area. It kind of messes up everything. The banks don't know what things are. They're having problems with other appraisers because now they have to look at a value where they don't even know where it came from, because they're looking at the comps, and it's putting them in a rough situation to have to deal with situation to tell a now owner that saw something sold for inflated value, not supposed to be there. Hey, I'm giving you real honest feedback on the value, and now it's completely different from what you expected.
Got it. Okay. So with that said, is it safe to say that appraisers make it a point to keep the market honest in that local market, right?
Yes.
So if I came in and I said, hey, listen, I'm in a $200,000 neighborhood, but I want to buy 3 houses in this neighborhood for $300,000, an appraiser can come in and say, hey, listen, I can't let you increase the market by 50% because it's not authentic. Because me personally, I would be creating a value that's not real for the market. And so is it safe to say that an appraiser is like a gatekeeper to balance and making sure that a market is true to its value?
Yes. Our whole model, when you're going through training, when you're going through licensing, it's about being impartial. It's about being unbiased.
Okay.
They teach a lot of that characteristic to make sure that you're not bribed, that you're not persuaded by homeowners, by realtors, by anyone. Because by doing so, it does make the whole market crash, because it's so much comparables and so much value that's not correct. So when you have that, and you have other buyers and other sellers that are in the market, everything gets misconstrued. To where it's not actual authentic, it's not honest, and it's everything. When value goes to a certain amount, it works its way up. It's never a drastic change in the value, because a comp has to start somewhere in order to build the value. Just to give you an example, sorry to get off topic, but I just want to give you an example of something that I experienced by being an appraiser. I was with a builder. They were building a home that they wanted value for. They wanted an appraisal for. The house was probably worth $450,000.
Right.
They built it, and most of their comps in the area that they built before was $460. Okay.
So it's 450, 460, pretty close.
Kind of close. And after that, they came with another appraisal, right? That they wanted on a new home. And in this new home, Contract price was $560,000. That's a completely drastic change from
Four-
what
four
from
six-
460. That's
Right.
100,000 up. It was a situation where I go into the appraisal, I execute, I do my research, I compare the comparables, and it's nowhere near the value of what they expect due to them adding maybe even a few more materials. Like I say, an example of over improvement.
Got
Their
it.
argument was it's worth 560 now, when in reality, I had to go back to them and I had to say, hey, it's not worth 560. This is worth at tops 470 due to what you put into it. But it's
Right.
just a misconception of what people think of what you put into it is what you'll get out of it. And I had to pretty much stop a builder in the middle of a contract with someone and making sure that someone else wasn't getting taken advantage of. And I was the median between the two. So that's why we're important, because we're the median between the people and the transactions to make sure everything is honest. Because if it's not, and we allow people to kind of contradict what they want it to be, it can throw off the whole chain of things, and it can have people in debt that they don't have to be in.
Got it. So you mentioned that appraisers like have gotten bribed or coerced or anything. Have someone tried to bribe you?
All the time. That's the main.
So is it like the movies where it's
Yes.
like, listen, I'm gonna slip you $100 and you give me the value, or is it more subtle? Like, listen, it'd be great if you had a steak dinner with the wife, you know, if my values came in. Like, what does a bribe today look like?
You'll be surprised at the things that people do and how they think to do it.
Okay.
I will have an appointment. They will make sure that they're there. They will walk with me. They'll try to build rapport. They'll talk, and not knowing the whole aspect of, I know where you're going with this.
Right.
I'm just going with this
You
to make you
just rolling
feel
with
like
it.
I'm going with this.
Okay.
And I'm not going to give you the feedback that you want,
Okay.
but I am here to listen to your argument
Sure.
on what you want to happen, or what do you think should contribute towards what your value is, what you expect.
So what are some of the more blatant bribes that's like, it's like, come on, man, you're not even trying now, right? What does that look
I
like?
had I didn't have it me personally, but I'm gonna speak from an experience from another appraiser that was in my office.
Okay.
He came back to from an appointment, and he was like, "Hey, man, a guy offered me $250 and said, hey, it was a refi, by the way.
All right.
I need the value to be right here. I'll give you $250 to get the value right here."
Just that hardcore.
Just that hardcore, that uncut, that just straightforward, that,
All right.
hey, let me cut the chase, not let me pat on your back, let me warm your feet, let me do everything that I can to
Right.
get you. No, let me go straight in for the kill. I need what I need. I want what I want. Can you help me?
Right.
And I just felt like that was just the funniest thing ever.
Do you ever, so when that happens, do you like feel like you have to report this person, or you're like, you know what, that's just part of the business. I'm gonna give it the value that I give. Do you not think twice? Do you not think twice about it, or do you like, you know what, I really want to stick it to this person? Like, does it ever become a point where you sought to short the value because of how unethical someone tried to be to you? Is that like a thing?
It's not a thing, and that's the thing. With being an appraiser, you have to have no emotions attached to everything.
Okay.
That's the main aspect of being an appraiser. You have to understand that people don't always know what they're supposed to do or the right thing to do. And if they don't know sometimes he can feel like bribing was something that was just normal. That was just something that you do when you're trying to get value.
Right.
And it's supposed to be like an unsaid code, but
Like
from an aspect of me having a license and being an appraiser, I can't like respond and work under those conditions. I have to always think from a logic, unbiased, impartial, just straightforward, how I see it, if I'm not attached emotionally to either party concept. That's
Okay.
how I have to look at everything that I look at.
So then that brings up a great question.
Okay.
You walking in, emotional to any situation. Like, listen,
Yes.
I'm not for the seller, I'm not for the buyer. I'm here to provide a value.
Yes.
Have you ever provided a value where the buyer, the seller didn't agree, and then they went really left? Like, they just turned up, like calling you, emailing you, texting you. Tell me about that.
Well, okay. I'm just giving you an example. I had a situation where I was in Prosper, Texas.
Okay.
I had a property I was appraising for a couple. They were going through a divorce.
Okay.
So it was a situation where she was married to the husband for a while, 20 years. I was appraising a property, doing inspection. She kind of gave me the rundown. I wasn't really there to listen, but you know, when you get to measuring properties and looking and you're asking questions about upgrades and things that you need to know
Right.
in order to make a hypothesis or a great decision behind this, you have to ask questions and talk.
Right, right.
So what they're telling me, she was going through a situation where her husband was having an affair, and she wanted the value to reach a certain amount. He thought the value was supposed to reach a certain amount as well. So you have two parties expecting two different values.
Okay.
So my thing is, I went in, like I said before, with an impartial mind, with the unbiased opinion,
Right.
and I gave a value based off of what I saw it,
Okay.
how I saw it.
Okay.
And of course, like you say, it was feedback. It was not good feedback from the husband, but the wife,
She loved it.
She loved it, you know, but I wasn't there to please her, but I was just there to I was the median between the two to make sure that no one was taken advantage of, but the guy didn't see it that way.
The husband, did he turn up at all?
Yes, of course. He turned up.
What does that mean? What did he do? What did he say?
Of course, he emailed my department. He emailed my boss. He emailed the appraisal headquarters just trying to get a response.
Okay.
And in this situation, that's why it's so important to be honest, to
Right.
cross your T's, to dot your I's, because when you have things like this to where you're not meeting the value of the person that's receiving the value, they can go up to someone else up the chain. And if you have all your T's and your I's, if you have your T's crossed and your I's dotted, you have an argument. You have a supported argument.
Okay.
And it's not just an opinion thrown out the air, a thin air, which is swayed by either party.
Got
You know what I
it.
mean? So it was very important that I was honest and I gave the right opinion on a value to make sure that the value is where it needs. And I had details explaining the value. So when the higher ups look at the situation and they analyze the situation and see all the information that I have on here, everything is backed up by facts.
Got it.
Facts.
Got it.
So that argument is thrown out the door when you're providing nothing but facts. That's my whole rule of thumb. That's with everything. If I'm going through an argument or anything, facts will change the whole aspect of the argument because you can't veer off from facts.
Well, in today's society, you can but traditionally, facts are king.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So then that brings me to this point. As an appraiser, does it ever weigh on you where you give a value and a deal collapses because of it? Does it ever mess with you? Like, man, this investor told me he was going for 500. He told me that 500 is where it needs to go. I landed it at 470. The deal's dead. Does it ever just cause you to lose sleep at night?
Am I human?
You are.
Yes, I have emotions. So yes, it did. I've had situations like that, but that's just part of the deal. That's part of the aspect that I signed up for. That's part of the industry that I'm in.
Okay.
It's not gonna always meet up to the value. Just like the builder expected the value to be somewhere. It's not always gonna add up to what you envision in your mind the value to be. It's gonna add up to what the value really is. And sometimes it's kind of hard to see the writing on the wall. It's very hard to see the writing on the wall from some people.
Okay.
Even if it's writing on the wall.
even if it's clear as day.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Do you enjoy what you do?
Yes, I definitely enjoy what I do. I have the aspect of meeting so many new people every day. I meet so many different individuals that do so many different things. I hear so many different stories. I can relate to people. I can understand the people. And I can understand what they're going through throughout the process of how I'm involved in it.
Got it. Okay. Do you feel the appraiser is the most important component in a real estate transaction?
Yes. The reason why, if that's what you're going to ask next.
The
reason why is because the situation you explained earlier. If you're an investor in a $200,000 neighborhood and you want to come in and raise the value by paying $300,000, you don't control the market. And if you're the builder that want to sell a house for $560,000 and it's worth $460,000, you don't control the market. So the person that's the end person receiving the benefits of what the whole situation is revolved around is not getting taken advantage of. And the market is not being swayed one way or the other. The market is being swayed the way it needs to be swayed. So if it's on a natural up scale or a downward scale, it's going to continue that way in the aspect that it needs to grow in, whether that's 2%, whether that's 5% in the market, or whether that's 10%. It's naturally and organic.
I feel like that's our nugget of the night. You are not going to sway the market regardless of your agenda.
Yes.
I got to tell you, nugget of the night. So I appreciate that. And I got to tell you, I just feel like there are so many mixed emotions that come with appraisers, right? Because the appraisers, to one aspect of it, you guys are the gatekeeper to keep the market honest. Because we all agree that in 2008, 9, 10, when investors, buyers, whoever could influence appraisers, the market a neighborhood went from 300,000 to 600,000 in like 6 weeks. And that's because appraisers were being coerced, bribed, incentivized, whatever the case may be. So on the other side of that, though, you have investors that feel that they were substantiated in their value. I have a 3.2, 1,800 square feet that should be worth 300, but my appraiser came in at 270 and I lost a non-refundable deposit, right? So what do you say to the investor that has been burned by an appraiser who probably had a really solid value? Because, and now let me back up before I ask this question.
Okay.
Is it safe to say that sometimes appraisers will short a value unnecessarily? Do you think that that's a thing? Or do you think that regardless of what the appraiser's opinion is, because the concern has always been one person potentially has the opportunity to implode an entire deal.
Yes.
Buyer, seller's agent, buyer, seller, lender, title company, insurance company. The appraiser comes in, cuts the legs from under everybody. Should one person, Kanye West style, have all that power?
Yes. And I will say this, with the collective or array of people behind him.
Okay.
So what I'm meaning by that is, if you're not really reaching the value that you want to reach, then it's very important, let me speak into this camera, it's very important for the investor to build a relationship with the appraiser, not to sway him, but to understand him and understand the things that you need to do, working around the parameters that he's telling you where you need to work around to get potentially to the value that you want to get to or the situation you want to get to. Not all situations can be swayed, but it's worth having the relationship so you can understand going forward into new projects and new investments, you understand what is looked at as value and what's contribute to value. So you understand the situation better. You won't understand it to an aspect of what an appraiser understands it. That's just, it's too much work that goes into it being an appraiser for a reason, because it's so many things that are compared and so many things that are looked into. So, but the thing is, you can look into a basis around things and build a relationship with the appraiser to understand what aspect and perspective he's actually looking for, to understand what you need to look for going forward in any investments that you intend to take on in the future.
5 years into the game, deliver a message to yourself as a new appraiser. If you could talk to Chad the appraiser month 3, what would be a piece of advice you give yourself?
Take the problems and road bumps as they come. Understand that the end goal is understanding everything around you, understanding all the rules that go into place when making decisions. Understand the things that you may see right then are not the things of what they come to be.
Okay.
And grow through those understandings, learn from those understandings, and become a better person and a better appraiser from those understandings and mistakes that you may make throughout your process and throughout your road and throughout your journey.
Got it. So, what do you ever take on an assignment and and you read through the prospectus and say, man, this is going to be tough.
Yes. I've actually declined assignments.
Whoa. Okay, hold on. Let's
Yes.
back up. So that's a whole nother thing.
Yes.
So you get assignments.
Yes.
You read it and you're like, no.
Yes.
Why?
Some situations are things that me in particular, don't want to take on. And when you receive assignments, you have the option to decide if you want it or not. So
Good to know.
In most cases, you want to make as much money as you want because you're in the business to make money, of course,
Right.
but you want to do things the right way, but you don't want to bend any rules. Some
Right.
situations and stipulations, if I'm not maybe familiar with a market area the way I want to be familiar with it, I may not take on it because I may not be able to give the expert advice about that area as I would like to, even though I can do some independent research to do it, but I won't have the experience in the area. I like to work off of experience in areas. I like to work off of what I know in that areas. Sometimes, of course, you have to grow in order to get to new aspects of new areas. So I do take on new challenges daily, weekly, monthly, but understanding situations like maybe you may have a property that's nowhere near another property, maybe near an airport. I had a situation that was, it was out in the boonies, out in the freaking boonies, and it had no comps, and it had an airport about a half a mile near it, but it didn't have any comps, and it was just a crazy situation because I didn't know anything about the area. It was out of my jurisdiction. So what I properly did was I declined the assignment, but I did do research to help the client and the customer out to let them know, hey, here's an appraiser in this area that you may be able to reach out to. I just want to make sure that everyone, no matter where they are getting an impartial decision made from the appraiser that's in that area, and you making sure that they're not getting taken advantage of, whether that's from the lender, whether that's from the realtor, whether that's from the bank, whether that's from the mortgage broker or anyone involved in the transaction. So I made sure that they were in a situation where, hey, if I can, that's the rule of thumb that what people don't understand. When you don't know things, you ask for help.
Right.
You get the people that do know. And you also learn from that situation to get more clarity going forward so you can handle that situation, but make sure that it's handled the correct way first.
I am buying the biggest house in the neighborhood.
Okay.
As an appraiser, am I making a bad decision?
No. The
Okay.
reason why is...
So, hang on, before you start.
Okay.
Lenders will often frown upon the investor buying the biggest house in the neighborhood because there are 10 sold comps at 1,500 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
My house is 3,500 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to go across highways, railroad tracks, a mile out. I have the biggest house in the neighborhood, really updated, really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a bad investment?
It depends on the investor perspective. It depends
Okay.
on what he's trying to do with it. Is he trying to flip it? Is he trying to rent it? Is he just trying to get it to live in it?
Okay.
It's a lot of situations that factors into it. You have to understand that you're not going to get the value of what it may be worth in another area full of comparables compared to it. So
All
it
right,
will
dive
persuade
into
the
that.
value.
Dive-
so what
dive
I'm meaning
into
by
that.
that is, if it's nothing but 1,500 square foot properties in the area,
the whole neighborhood.
it is considered like an over improvement, but does hold a lot of weight of value because an experienced appraiser is going to find a house that may be in another subdivision. It may
Okay.
be across a market area, but he has the means to go across a market area because he has something to explain on why he's going across a market area because it's nothing that's near him that's like him. So if
Okay.
it's nothing near him that's like him, I do have to expand the horizons to find something that's like me.
So you
And
mean
that's-
go further out in
yes,
distance?
you go further out in the instance, and a lot of people don't understand, and they kind of get from the aspect of, I'm scared, man, this house is too... No, you just have to have an experienced appraiser that knows what he's doing
Okay.
and know what areas that are comparables to that area.
So then let's say in this, just following on from this, there's a neighborhood that has high volume. The houses are selling pretty good, 1,800 square feet. My house is 3,500 square feet, this whole subdivision. The neighboring subdivision across a major street or even a highway is multiple 25, 3,000, 3,500 square foot houses.
Yes.
So if you use those houses as comps, do you have to factor down for
Yes.
any, you have to factor down, or is it like these are true, is this considered apples to apples comparison, or just by default the fact that this house is in a $300,000 neighborhood where all the other comps are in a $500,000 or $600,000 neighborhood? Do you have to factor down because of that?
Yes, you have to factor down because you're only as good as what's around you. And
You're only as good as your proximity.
There you go. You're only good as what your proximity is.
Okay.
And of course, you know, being an appraiser, you have to find comps. You have to bring this to life. You have to understand the aspect of where you're looking at it from. And you have to understand that, hey, it may not be anything close to it, but there is something in another subdivision that has similar quality of materials, similar builder, has the same builder. You find common areas that you can reach, and you can exploit those common areas to find out more details, and other details lead to other details to where you're able to get some type of connection. You find the connection on what that property is and what it has to whatever it is out there.
Yes or no? I use the dollar per square foot in my subdivision, even though the other sold comps are half or less than half of the size of my house. Can I use those sold comps? Yes or no?
No, if there are no comps that's in other subdivisions by it.
So if there are other similar sized houses in neighboring subdivisions,
Yes.
you would use those comps. But if there's 5 houses on my street that sold that are, my house is 3,500, these other houses are 1,500, I cannot use a reduced dollar per square foot to value my house because my house is completely different? Or can I use it because literally the house next door to me, that's 1,800 square foot sold, I'm 3,500 square feet. Could I use that as a sold comp, or pretty much no matter how it shakes down, I can't use it?
Yes, you can use it with parameters, meaning like you say, you're not close to the 1,800 square foot, but it's in a subdivision, it's the same builder, has the same quality materials, so I may be able to use the price per square footage on what the highest property sold. If it's similar to it, I can use it. So say, for instance, if the house for 1,800 square foot sold at $122 per square foot,
right,
I may be able to use that as a basis of 122 square foot on the 3,000, depending on if it's no comps in that area, and maybe if I look in the area, I can combine the comps, one comps out of the subdivision, and maybe provide other comps in the other subdivision, and have a collective of comps, and I can adjust the adjustments, meaning the 1,200 difference that you have between the 1,800 and 3,000, I can adjust the 1,200 square footage to make the difference because it's right by it. So if the houses are selling for 122, what makes you think that this house should sell for 122? At the max, if it's up with all the bells and whistles compared to what it is.
So, yes or no? Homeowner buying the biggest house in the neighborhood, bad purchase, yes or no? Homeowner. It's going to be my house. I'm going to deck it out, but I'm buying the biggest house in the neighborhood, twice the size of all the other houses in the neighborhood. Bad investment, yes or no?
No.
Investor. I'm going to buy this house, biggest house in the neighborhood. I'm going to fix it up and sell it with the similar price points for the neighborhood on the other side of the freeway. I can see the other neighborhood from my upstairs bedroom on the other side of the freeway. Is that a gamble?
It's a gamble.
That's a gamble.
It's a gamble.
Okay. What do you think about, so then let's do this. Tell investors, right? So I want to back up real quick. And I want to throw you into the center of the 360 circle for hacking your trade, right?
Okay.
So we're going to hack the trade of an appraiser.
Okay.
Pay attention to this because right now we're going to get right into the meat and gristle of it. As an appraiser, tell investors how they go about properly finding a property to know, hey, this is what you should consider when you're trying to target an ARV, a subject to value. After you fix it up, these are the things you should consider when you're fixing up a property to not over improve it, but to improve it just right to get the perfect value. Give us the trick of the trade.
I would say it's a collective of things. It's an array of things. It's it's a research. It's going to take time to cover a lot of things that you need to cover, but for one, square footage. Square footage is very important.
Okay.
On how much square footage the property is compared to the properties that are selling in the area.
Okay.
Lot size. That's important as well.
Is it?
Yes. Lot
Okay.
size is important because it's the size of the property. If you have a lot that's on a cul-de-sac compared to a lot that's just in the middle of a street, you're gonna have more desirable to stay there. When you say so, when you
I would
want to
agree.
stay in a cul-de-sac compared to just the street,
Sure.
so that thought alone is a plus.
Okay.
So considering lot size, considering billing of materials, the materials used in it, the construction of how they're built.
What about the finish out?
Yes,
Is that
the
important?
finish, very important. The finish out is very important because, like I said before, it's comparing apples to apples. So
Okay.
you want to make sure that the finish out is the same as the finish out that you're going for.
Okay.
So when you're an investor, the first thing you can look into is look at the finish out of the property selling at the ARV that you desire to be at. And when you look into that, you want to make sure that it's similar to the square footage and not too far off. And if it is, you need to have an appraiser that you have, like as myself, as someone that you can call, you can ask questions, and you can get more detail on adjustments.
Okay.
But you want to look into the finish out. You can only get to where you're trying to go. So what I'm meaning by that is if you see something that's selling at 170 all fixed up, you're buying something at 70, you know that's prime motivation on where you need to be in order to reach that 170 mark.
Okay.
So what you do is you don't reinvent the wheel.
Right.
You go, you look at what they're doing, and you model that and you do your own aspect of it, but you make sure that the finish out is similar to what they have on what's sold at 170.
Got
So
it.
you can understand, hey, I can reach the value that I want to reach if I reach the value and the aspect of what the person that just sold this property for has reached. Look how nice it looks. Look at the countertops. Look at the backsplash. Look at the bathrooms. Look at the ceiling. Look at the roof. Look at the finish out. Look at the extra materials that they may have in that aspect on what contributed to the value of what they actually got for it.
Got it.
To understand where you need to put your aspect of your knowledge and your construction of materials into place that you need to put it in order to reach those same specific details that they had. Like I said, my whole aspect is not reinventing the wheel. It's you already have the layout. When people flip homes, that's the prime example for another real estate investor to walk in and take notes and understand and grasp it and apply it to whatever you're trying to do in that area.
Got it. So if I'm going for max market, I shouldn't put rental grade everything, aspiring for top market rate. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that's a fair statement.
Got it. What are your thoughts? So you've dropped nugget after nugget, but what are your thoughts about if the neighborhood is selling for 150?
Okay.
There's a house identical in footprint, but I want to sell for 155.
Okay.
Am I pushing the envelope, or am I just within reasonable amount to push the market value to get that value? Assuming that the house that sold for 150, it sold 0 days on the market, which means that on the first day, there were probably multiple offers.
There you go.
So am I justified in saying, you know what, 155 is not unreasonable?
It's not unreasonable.
So but 155 is going to be the highest that sold in the neighborhood in the last 12 months.
Yes.
Should I go for the 155?
Yes, I would go for the 155 because you want to analyze the situation at 150. You want to analyze everything that they took into account, everything that they put energy into, and you want to you got to almost overdo it in order to get to that aspect. And $5,000 is pushing the market, but it's not pushing the market drastically.
Got it.
It's an organic.
It's an organic
Yes,
step up.
it's an
right?
organic step up.
Okay.
Like I was saying before, it's not nothing that's 110 to 210. It's
Got it.
more so, hey, I have something similar in the materials of what just sold for 150, but it's actually 2 times or 3 times better than what that is.
Right.
So it does get more contributory value due to more bells and whistles that's on the aspect.
Or the market has said that
Yes.
at 150, that may have been slightly underpriced.
Yes.
Because at 0 days on the market,
There
that
you
means
go.
the day it went on the market, it went under contract.
That's the most important thing. Looking at how long it was on the market compared to when it's sold. So if stuff is selling in 0 days, just imagine what would it sell if you had 155 with 2 times more upgrades than that. It's going to probably sell 0 to 5 days. So that kind of determines that the value is slightly below what it's supposed to be because it's a hot market. If it was on the market for 100 days, then you have a problem. 300 days, you have a problem at that because nobody is desired to stay there. It depends on the desirability of what's actually there and what people want. All that contributes to the value.
Chad, I can tell you, I tell you, man, I could spend the next 2 or 3 hours talking about this. Okay. But if you had to leave one message to wrap up the show, if you had to leave one message with real estate investors who are flipping homes, what would that message be?
Forget everything you think you know about value. It's more details that go into value. It's a long aspect of details that go into value. Understand the market, understand your subject down to the T, understand square footage, lot size, year built, bathroom count, bedroom count, finish out, pier and beam, slab. All of these things go into account when we're comparing comparables to comparables. Build relationships with appraisers. Talk to appraisers, not to sway them in the way that you want, but to understand what they're judging things from so you can understand what you need to judge your future projects from, to understand how you get your value and where your value come from, to where you know what areas to look at to determine your value. Once you're in the area of where your value of where you want to be, you just continue to talk with them, you ask questions because different adjustments are for different neighborhoods. So once you understand the aspect of just getting close to the comparables of what's close to what, you build a relationship with an appraiser and just grasp their brain. Just pick their brain as much as you can to understand the market because every market is different. Every market is not the same. And understand that it's very important to have a relationship with an appraiser, not to sway them. Again, I'm going to put a lot of emphasis on that. Not to sway them, but to understand what they're opinionating the value off of so you can alter your whole aspect of how you do your business model, how you run your operation, how you do everything. And you understand where you need to be when you are where you need to be to get where you need to be.
My gosh, if there hasn't been gems dropped this episode, I don't know what is. So, Chad, how do people get in touch with you?
For one, I have an email that you can reach me. It's chad@Lockett-N-Homes.com. If you need to, reach out to me for whatever reason to understand or maybe even just throw some ideas out there on value and what you need help with, I'm here.
Spell that out for us.
Okay, it's going to be CHAD.
Chad.
The @ symbol. LOCKETTNHOMES.com.
Got it.
That's my email. I have access to it. You can email me. I'll answer any, brief questions that I can to help you throughout your journey. All investors out there, I'm here. I'm the appraiser. I'm appraiser friendly, but I'm not friendly to sway anything, but for you to understand the aspect of what we appraise off.
You got to go on record to say that.
Yes.
So Chad, man, it has been a pleasure. I cannot tell you how useful this information has been, and I'm sure, like myself, many investors will take a lot of consideration into what you said. So again, and for anyone that's interested, feel free to reach out to Chad@Lockett-N-Homes.com. Yes. Again, thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Adonis Lockett. Make sure to subscribe to our channel, like this video. Feel free to leave comments. I'm interested to know your feedback about the information you received today. And thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.